Another edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by TheLines.com. I'm Eli Hershkovich, joined by Justin Perri at Justin Perri 8, college basketball data analyst for Shot Quality Bets, handicapping the Wednesday college basketball card. Justin, how are we doing, my man?
Oh, it is a great time of the year to be a college basketball fan. I mean, this is when all the attention starts turning towards some of these conference seedings, battles for the regular season title. And of course, everyone's starting to think about who's going to make the Elite Eight. Where can I place a sharp future? Where's the price a little bit off for me to get a good edge on maybe some action come March? So, already planning my trip out to Vegas, got my team coming with me this year. It's going to be a great first weekend of March Madness. I can't wait. Selection Sunday's around the corner, even though it still has a full month of February to go.
Yeah, it's less than 2 months away, which is pretty crazy to say. I also can't believe we're about 2.5 weeks away or so from the Super Bowl. But I digress. Looking at this Wednesday slate, actually referencing our last show, going back to last week, probably one of the worst beats of the season. East Carolina and North Texas under. Take it away.
Oh man. Well, what the clock ran out, and then the operators put half a second back, and full court, half court heave, 3/4 heave goes in to smash from 126 to 129, ruining everybody's fun. I had a 129 and a half, which could be found before the overnight line movements, though. So I got away with a little bit of a lucky one. A lot of people, unfortunately, got that 128 and a half, which is maybe one of the most cruel things I've seen in a long time. You can make arguments that even the clock was, allowed to go maybe more than a half a second. I've seen it before. I watched St. John's lose to Baylor on a bad clock operator
Oh,
start stop.
stop. Stop complaining about a
I'm not
November
complaining.
call.
I'm saying it happens. I'm saying it happens. You're going to be on the wrong side. You're going to be on the right side.
Yeah.
I don't think you can worry about those at all. You can't sit there and rue the day for your bet. You're probably going to get gifted one in the future. Welcome to college ball.
Hey, Johnny still covered against Baylor, too.
Oh, I know. I wanted to win. I wanted that extra game against Tennessee instead of having to play Virginia. That's what
Yeah.
I'm more upset about. It's not necessarily just the cover and the money. I did all right.
Speaking from a fandom or from a fan standpoint there, but let's get into Xavier and your St. John's Red Storm, number 20 in the AP Top 25.
Let's
As we,
go.
yeah, St. John's ranked for the first time all season,
Yeah.
I believe. Yeah,
Yeah.
good for you. Good for the Johnnies, Rick
Let's
Pitino.
go.
Finally getting some praise from the national media if he hasn't gotten enough over the last couple years. But again, I digress. Xavier opened as a 7.5 point dog as we record here on Tuesday, January 21st, about 26 hours or so before tip off of this game, 7 p.m. Eastern time on Wednesday on Fox Sports 1. We bought low seemingly on Xavier last week. They covered as a 2.5 point home favorite against Villanova. Closed 3.5 at some shops, but I think consensus was around the juice 2.5. My biggest bet regret, Justin, over the weekend was not betting Xavier against Marquette. Now, I know Shot Quality had that one as a slight Marquette win, but Xavier closed around plus 9.5, so Marquette just under 10-point home favorite, and Xavier covered that with ease and won the game outright even down the stretch despite nearly blowing a 19-point lead. They also held Cam Jones to 11 points on 5 of 13 shooting. To me, Zach Fremantle's defense, the improvement there and not having to play drop coverage, this is kind of where it's twofold because, yes, Xavier doesn't have one of their transfer bigs, Traore, lost for the season. They got him from Long Beach State during the offseason. But you still have elite on-ball defenders in Swain and Marcus Foster, one transfer, Marcus Foster, coming over from the mid-major ranks. And since January 3rd, when Fremantle came back from his injury, Xavier ranks 17th in adjusted defensive efficiency on Torvik. So goes without saying, I'm pretty high on the Musketeers. I'm going to be betting Xavier in this game, but what does Shot Quality have to say data-wise before I get into my handicap?
Shot quality has to say, give me some Xavier. I think it's still available to buy low on them even after a win against Marquette. I don't think you necessarily see efficiency models overreact. It's maybe the market that is going to underreact here and then say, oh, okay, well maybe Xavier won that by a fluke. Like you said, shot quality had them right there with Marquette. And sure, it wasn't necessarily like a 5 point win, but let's be realistic about what they went and did. I mean, even an expected close game on the road against a team that is rated as highly as Marquette is in shot quality is a big deal. And I mean, we're seeing the rewards for Xavier in the SQ numbers. Like you said, the defense has been stellar. They currently, for their entire season, sit as a top 20 defense in the shot quality expected points per possession allowed, allowing less than a point per possession, 18th to be exact. Offense, 32nd, which puts them in the top 25. That's very different than what you're going to find over at Ken Palm in the efficiency metrics. And that's better than what we have the Johnnies as. So we kind of have this as maybe potentially a spot where it should be a little bit closer to 2 points for St. John's, 3 maybe. These teams probably a little bit closer to even right now in terms of how they're playing, the problems that St. John's can inflict upon themselves. I've watched a lot of this Johnny's team. We know the offense can sputter. It just can. I don't. The jump shooting can sort of just take a hit, and a lot of times they can struggle with the penetration, especially without Smith. So we'll have to see how they look. I expect them to do well. It's going to be hopefully a big crowd. I'm going to be there. I got my tickets. So if you're going to be out there, let me know. It's going to be a great game. I have not seen a game for St. John's when they are in first place in the Big East ever. So that's a pretty cool experience. I'll save the ticket for sure. But no, I do think this is a spot where you can not only continue to buy low on Xavier, but sell high on the Johnnies. We do not have them in our top 25. Their defense is great, but the offense for us a little bit lacking there. Top 12, top 15 defense, but the offense actually outside the top 60 right now in shot quality. Expected to have some pretty strong regression right now in terms of both their finishing at the rim and their mid-range. But yeah, in all honesty, the defense has been maybe even too good as well. It's not that it's not great, but they've been
They pressure the ball
killer.
a ton. When they turn you over, that's when they're elite at that end.
Right. Yeah. I mean, top what, 20 or so in turnover rate. That's going to be a big deal. How Xavier can sort of combat that is going to be tough. They're not great. They're not poor at it in terms of how it looks just for the Big East teams. Xavier sitting right now, I think like 7th in offensive turnover rate. So we'll see. We'll see if they step up at the Garden. A lot of teams tend to step up at the Garden, but coming off of a big Marquette win, can they put back-to-back performances together? I tend to think this one's going to be a little bit closer to the line, but the line probably should be like 5.
Yeah. Marquette didn't play well over the weekend, but neither did Xavier, shooting 2 of 11 from 3. So worth noting there, it's not like they outperformed their offensive expectation by a mile, and then Marquette just had a cold shooting night. Cam Jones didn't shoot well. Neither did any of Xavier's stud perimeter players like Ryan Conwell, who they got in the portal from Indiana.
That game was for anyone to take. Xavier shot 2 of 17 from deep. Marquette
and they were up 19.
Yeah.
Crazy. So it's pretty indicative to me of how well Xavier played despite not shooting well. But looking at this game specifically, potentially no Davion Smith for St. John's dealing with that shoulder injury. I really wasn't sure why Pitino decided to play Smith against Seton Hall on Saturday. Risk reward of him playing versus maybe seeing another extended absence. So it seems like Pitino hinted at that Smith won't suit up. We'll see. Could be a little bit baked into the number with the line dipping from 7.5 to 6.5 on open. Very, very low limits on those openers, by the way, as we record here on Tuesday. But when you look at CBB analytics, what St. John's does with and without Smith on the court, their effective field goal percentage is up 4 percentage points with Smith on the floor. So one of the best passers in the conference, pretty underrated across college basketball in that regard. They lose a lot when it comes to distribution without Davion Smith. So worth noting there. Xavier also fell to St. John's on their home floor, revenge spot for the Musketeers on the road. No Zach Fremantle in that first matchup. And Xavier fighting for their at-large resume. You mentioned how Xavier, will they get up for this game? Or at least will they have a little bit of a lull after winning a huge road game at Marquette? But this game means everything, or a decent amount to them. This 3-game stretch, you beat Marquette, then you get St. John's on the road, and then you get UConn at home on Saturday. But I still wouldn't call this a sandwich spot, a letdown spot by any means, because of the magnitude of this game for their at-large resume. So I mentioned the revenge spot. If you go back to when these two teams linked up on January 7th at Cintas Center, St. John's didn't shoot well, neither did Xavier. Both teams shot below 22.5 or below 23% from behind the arc. And actually, Fremantle did play, but that was when he was just starting to come back. So had Fremantle in that game, but just starting to make his way back in that one. And as I mentioned, this is kind of where Xavier's defensive efficiency took a step up in the right direction.
Yep.
And then one last thing for me, with St. John's transition defense, they rank in the 8th percentile since the beginning of January when it comes to transition defense. Transition defense was a big issue for them last year. That's because they try to generate a bunch of second chance opportunities because of how hard they crash the offensive glass. And then St. John's is also the second worst free throw shooting team in the conference. So even if the Johnnies are up late in this game, you're talking about a 6-point spread. Free throws are going to be big.
Yep. And again, I mean, the transition defense doesn't look great, but I struggle to find any good transition defense in the Big East, honestly. You got a lot of really good offensive players. So I'm not too off-put by it. They do a decent job limiting the amount of transition.
Because they generate so many offensive rebounds.
It is. No, it's true. It is. So you need to rely on that. And obviously, Zubi Ejiofor has been a revelation. And I think this is going to be another interesting battle. And the last game between these two was a free throw clinic. So we'll see if that continues at the Garden. I tend to think it does. The defensive guards and point forward, Kadari with RJ, and then, of course, with having Simeon Wilcher and Aaron Scott shooting a little bit better now. I really like the St. John's team, not just as a homer, but I do think this is one of the toughest tests for them of the season. There's real reason to get concerned if Smith doesn't play. I mean, he's one of the best passers in the nation, and it creates, elite level spacing as well. And what Xavier is going to be able to do in terms of limiting that and limiting shot selection if he's not there, it could, if he doesn't play, I think it could very easily become a slow game on both sides of the floor, because if St. John's can't develop shots, they're going to just lock in defensively, and it could just be a rock fight. But and then it'll probably come down to who hits free throws, and the 7.5, 6.5 will probably have value at any number. Wouldn't really take it below 5, 5.5. Definitely wouldn't touch 4.
I'm with you there. And one last note on transition for Xavier's offense. They not only rank in the 95th percentile in terms of percentage of transition or percentage of minutes, percentage of seconds in transition per game, but they also rank in the 95th percentile points per possession in transition. So no joke under Sean Miller year over year. He runs elite transition offense, and he enforces the opportunity to push the floor. And with these guards, even though they can be inconsistent from three-point land in their own right, like I mentioned, struggling against Marquette, you look at the overall regular season numbers, 26th in three-point efficiency on the season. But Big East play middle of the pack, so we'll see how they shoot at the guard. And I agree, it could be a little bit of a slugfest. But if Xavier is able to push the tempo in transition, especially when St. John's doesn't get those second chance shots, that's going to be a big key.
And it'll be an SQ over slugfest, right? Like they're going to get the possessions, they're going to miss the shots, and you're going to be like, oh, they were supposed to go over, and it's like, well, it's tough. I mean, there are, you get to the point where, like, when you get that versed in expected data, you're like, well, that has the potential to go under and be expected to go over, and people give you that side eye, like, what? It's like, well, that's one of those games. So we'll see how it goes. Conference battle, both teams high aspirations. look, St. John's wants to up that seeding as much as possible. Rick Pitino knows how crucial every line is. He doesn't want to lose a single game the rest of the season. He wants to win at Madison Square Garden. He wants that Garden packed. They're ranked. It's the first game ranked since they returned to the Garden. First game ranked in how long? It might be 20 years. So it's a big deal. Again, I'm bringing some friends. We're going to be out there yelling our tails off in the 200 section. I got some free tickets from being a Knicks season tickets holder. So hopefully
Humble
it's loud.
brag there.
Oh, I mean, look, you got to support. New York basketball is my life, Eli. It's what I do. It's what I live and breathe. And you can get some pretty good ticket packages without breaking the bank for the Knicks. It's not that bad.
All right. Listen, my humble brag is that I went to high school with Jalen Brunson. So,
oh wow. I went to high school with Eric Pascal. So there you go, little combo right there. Villanova, 2015, A10 Rookie of the Year.
Hey, this podcast was meant to happen. Clearly,
there you go.
But one last thing on Xavier. Overall, full body of work. I mentioned to you this before the podcast that I have a future I want to share. Xavier to make the Final Four.
Ooh, okay.
43-1 at FanDuel. Very small bet. Very, very small bet. Like a tenth of a unit for me.
Yeah.
Super small, but I like the price. This defense has transformed now that they don't have to play drop coverage with Fremantle at the 5. He is playing the best defense of his career, and then all around, like the length on this team in terms of generating turnovers, Swain is one of the most versatile Swiss Army knives in the conference. Like RJ Lewis is for St. John's. Swain is starting to become that for Xavier. So I really like the upside of this team. Also, Marcus Foster, really, really good, if not borderline elite defender in this conference. So coaches are going to make the, over the top leap in terms of Final Four expectations at some point in their career, or at least you would think. Sean Miller is yet to go to a Final Four, right?
It's got to happen. He's got to get his swing. It's got a little bit of variance. It hasn't happened before. Look, some guys never get their shot, but, I don't know. We've seen a lot of chalk. We're seeing. I hate to try to predicate stuff based on injuries, but Broom, an ankle injury mid-season. I'm just like, look, those are things that get re-injured. High ankle sprain. You know how hard it is to not re-injure a high ankle sprain at a high level, playing basketball every day, practicing every day.
I have an Auburn future, and I'm freaking out over here, man. Preseason, going back to last April, 35, 40
as much as obviously it could have gone a lot worse and could be done for sure. There's a lot of uncertainty right now, and there's still a lot of price gravity on Auburn. I think this, and then on the other side of the coin, the other 5-1 to take it all is a freshman in with Duke, right? And it's just hard to do. It's hard to do. A bad game for a star player who's also happens to be 17, 18 years old is very likely. And so I think this is one of those years where you can do very well. And I might not join you for Final Four, but maybe a sprinkle Final Four, a little drizzle on, Elite Eight, and then a hefty year bet on Sweet 16. But that's what I'm feeling though, right? I do think there's a lot of talent in the Big East. That's probably my sleeper conference right now. Every time I watch Big East basketball, I'm like, wow, this is good stuff. And even the bad teams are kind of good. Georgetown's still been impressive. Villanova's not as terrible as people thought. I think
Kyle Neptune sucks.
Sure. But the talent's there, and if that's a mid to bad team in the conference, that's pretty good at the top. Even your Blue Demons are more serviceable than not, and they're not gonna. They won a game, Eli. They won a game. I don't want to hear it. They won a game, so it's a new day.
Does Chris Holtman use shot quality?
I don't know, but I hope so, because it's awesome. And again, the floor rises. I think, there's really good competition. There's tournament level competition. You have NBA talent on Georgetown and Sorber, and Mack and Epps were great at the Garden, and they played great against Villanova to secure that run. And there was an ejection, but I think Big East teams to do some damage in March will pay well, especially, the gravity for UConn, the gravity for
Yeah, when McNeely comes
Duke.
back, their
Right. I mean,
ceiling is completely different.
there's so much weight at the top that I think people love to take, and I don't think it's one of those years. I'll eat some crow if one of the top three on odds favorites to win does it, but I think you can make some money this year. I think the Final Four will have a bunch of crooked numbers. I'm excited.
This Justin Perri soapbox moment is sponsored by Shot Quality. All right, moving on to a Big Ten game. We'll see what your perception is of a
Oh, here we
different
go. Here
conference.
we go.
Indiana, a 4.5-point dog at Northwestern. So Northwestern conversely favored by just under 5. Total in this game on the open, 141.5, 7 p.m. Eastern time tip on the Big Ten Network. What does Shot Quality have to say here?
We do not like Indiana, Eli. We are a little bit down on them. A 23% record luck difference, expecting this to be a 10-9 team in their 19 Division I contests so far. They are 14-5. Again, a lot of that kind of comes from the win percentages, not like the discrete win expectancies. So like expected to, the Iowa loss was a big one, no chance to win. But then also something like Penn State, they won that game, expected to lose by 5 on the road. There's a bunch of other, expected results earlier in the season, December and November especially. So some of the foundational stuff there for Indiana is pretty interesting. 1-point win at Ohio State was a win. But, Illinois, the spanking was legitimate. Iowa, the spanking was legitimate. USC, okay, a nice home win there, but maybe a little bit of a difficulty for a travel spot for a new team in the conference. Not really sold on how they defend the three. Not really excited about how little they shoot the three. They move pretty quick, so if it doesn't go well, it gets ugly quickly. And again, the problem really comes down to, some of these numbers look good, but when you do it for just how they look in the conference, they're getting outclassed in a lot of places. They don't force turnovers nearly enough. The shot making is the worst in the Big Ten, 34th percentile nationwide, 18th best in the Big 18. Out of timeout, SQ points per possession, offensively, worst in the Big Ten.
Who's worse, Kyle Neptune or Mike Woodson?
If you want to go out of timeout, Woodson goes 0.85 and 1 on defense, so he defends. Defends it pretty well. Which is average, I guess. Let's see. Villanova has been okay. Let's see. Out of the timeout, Villanova's been pretty good. So I think that might just be, maybe some
Eric
of the
Dixon.
talent. And yeah, exactly. So, they can just sort of slap him on the ball and get some good denial or even off ball. And they do a good job in terms of, some of the rim and 3 rate allowed that, I think Indiana would love to adopt. It's just on offense, they don't shoot enough threes. And then
they don't have besides Luke Goody.
Right.
And this goes without saying when Malik Renew was healthy and now he's not playing, and it has paid dividends to an extent, but even so, they don't have enough shooting. If you look at where their efficiency ranks across college basketball, not just in Big Ten play, 279th in Division I.
Yeah. And look, this isn't like some major thing. This is a few points in either direction. You can compare SQ to KenPom pretty easily by looking at when you go take a look at the efficiencies for KenPom. So Indiana sitting at 112.6 offensively. You go over to shot quality. Their offense is 1.13. So pretty similar there. And then on defense, shot quality is 1.01. And on KenPom is 98.7. So that's where the big difference is that shot quality expects a solid 3% regression defensively here for what Indiana's doing. So if they were performing that much worse, then you essentially moved them from like that adjusted efficiency there at 59th in KenPom, which is currently 13.86. You move them down to like a 10.86. Then they're like a top 80 team is what SQ kind of sees based on the KenPom numbers. So Is that enough to get a 3-point edge in the market? Yeah, I do think so. If you trust the shot quality data, there should be a nice little boost there also to Northwestern. So I do think this is one of the stronger plays out of the ones we're discussing here today. Northwestern's been a team that has, maybe run into some tough opponents as well. I mean, it's never easy to play Michigan State. You never look good in that scenario, and they lost by 10. Shot quality only expected a loss by 2 on a 2.5-point spread. And I think you and I both lost on that game, Eli. We both had Northwestern against MSU. And then they beat Maryland on an expected loss. So they kind of got a little bit of that bounce back and then looked good against Michigan, covered on an expected 16-point loss on the road. So played really tough. So, it's not always a crucifixion when a team outperforms shot quality. Yes, it could, regress, but it also is a good thing. You want that. You want to be able to see that. If a team never outperforms their expectations, you should start to be able to predict that they never will again. You want to see that dance around both sides of the expectation because that's what a normal team does. Northwestern can finish at the rim well. They're pretty heavy in the post.
That's the thing. So on the other end of the floor, this is my gripe with Northwestern, and it's interesting because very similar roster construction up front, or at least in terms of your starting center, going back to last season, and Northwestern's post-up defense and pick-and-roll man defense, for that matter, really, really struggling. Like, we're talking 7th percentile pick-and-roll man and post-up defense in the 12th percentile on a points-per-possession allowed basis. Umar Ballo could very well pick them apart. But I will say my one concern with Indiana is the takeaways from the Ohio State game. Played well over the course of 50 minutes to win that game in overtime, but no Devin Royal for Ohio State, who is very underrated on the glass and an underrated scorer mid-range and around the rim and can even space the floor inconsistently, but still a big piece nonetheless on that Buckeyes team. So I make this line around Northwestern -3, -4. I don't find any value, and I struggle with takeaways from both of these teams last set of a couple games because even Northwestern, the Michigan game, I kind of go both ways. Like maybe Michigan is overvalued a little bit in the market, but Maryland should have beat Northwestern on the road if they hit their open threes.
Yep, without a doubt. And again, it's not the easiest sell, but it's a good spot for if you trust the shot quality to come home there a bit. It's Northwestern's an interesting team for sure, and I think definitely a lot of difficulty comparing them to the rest of the conference, but they're still a good team because again, the Big Ten loaded. And I think their main thing that really keeps them kind of going for Northwestern is the possession battle. They're not going to they're not going to turn the ball over, and they're going to turn you over. Indiana's not going to force that ball out of their hands. So yes, they might not take the best shots, and yes, they might not play the best defense when you get a shot. But they're going to get in those passing lanes. They're going to make good passes. They're going to create some pretty good spacing. And, Indiana's going to be amazing at finishing at the rim. But at some level, I think you almost let Ballo beat you and you don't overcommit and you don't let them open up the spacing on the threes and you try not to foul and you maybe attack him on the other end and try to get him in foul trouble. And and then you let them kind of go inside because they're gonna be able to beat you inside. The worst thing you can do is let the shooters get open looks, and then it's this combination of the gravity.
The one thing with Indiana's offense, like you mentioned, if they do double or if they don't decide to double Ballo, play him in single coverage versus if they do, if he gets cooking early on, Indiana 41st percentile in cutting efficiency, so buckets off cuts per synergy. It's not elite. Like Mbako is a stud athlete, but he's not terrific at finishing off of cuts.
Again, you don't overcommit. You don't let them kick out too much. It's not going to be easy. Obviously, easier said than done. Oh, just don't do all the things you shouldn't do. Bowling coach, knock down all the pins. Justin, you want to run Green Bay's basketball team? It's
that's for Doug Gottlieb and Doug Gottlieb only.
I agree. I wouldn't take the job. I got too much other stuff going on.
Yeah, but we all are a little preoccupied here. But Justin, let's move on
Sure.
to a Mountain West matchup in Fort Collins, Colorado. We have Boise State at Colorado State. The opener for this game, Colorado State -1.5, total of 139.5 here. To me, this is a great matchup for Boise State's interior offense with Stanley and in particular Tyson Dagenhart, one of the best players in the Mountain West, going up against a Colorado State team in conference that is allowing the second highest 2-point scoring rate. Their rim defense is very, very exploitable. So I see shot quality as an edge toward Boise State, and I would agree the Broncos are the right side.
Yeah. Look, we've been high on Boise. I eat a lot of crow when I played them at the pit. But, the shot quality score wasn't that bad. And they just got a little unlucky, and it was 23 at the half instead of 15, which maybe is a little bit more manageable. And again, maybe I should have known that they come out blazing hot every game there. But look, there's going to eventually be value fading them, right? That's how it's got to work. But yeah, no, this should be a good spot to get in on Boise a little bit higher on them in the market. It's a tough to win on the road, but this should be a spot where they can go in there and do it. They have all the components that you look for on a team that can, have their offense and their defense travel on the road. This is a team that rates in the top 25 of shot quality. Their rim and three rate is almost 90%, which is, again, very high, 50th, 48th best in the nation. The shot selection on both sides of the ball, it was what you want to see. They get to the line, maybe lacking in open threes, but they still take enough threes that it's all right. And, they're finishing at the rim, and their rim frequency are just amazing. They do everything very well. They've been a little unlucky, too. The offense has been a little colder than expected. So definitely a good time to still be buying in on Boise State. Will likely be a play for me when I get down on lines tonight.
All right. So, and just kind of capping that off with Colorado State, you look at who they played or who they beat in conference: San Jose State, Fresno State, UNLV, Wyoming. So despite the fact that the Rams are ranked third in defensive efficiency in league play and third in offensive efficiency, granted Nico Medved, one of the best offensive coaches in the country, but defensively, they haven't played or they haven't beat any upper echelon teams in the conference. And when they played New Mexico, 10-point loss or 8-point loss at home, didn't cover. San Diego State on the road, lost by 15, didn't cover. So
expected to lose to Nevada on the road, expected to lose to Wyoming on the road. And expected to beat Colorado on the road, but it's still not pretty. TCU win, maybe a little lucky, neutral early in the year there.
Overtime.
Right. But yeah, they finished the rim well, but they don't get to the rim a lot. I think Boise will pose some problems in terms of the defense near the hoop, and they're going to just likely be a team that cools off over time rather than heats up because they are hot. They have been shooting very well at the rim. They've been getting very lucky. Teams are only shooting 28% against them from mid-range. I just don't think that continues. So,
right. Moving on to the marquee matchup on the slate. Top borderline 15. If you want to look at the AP top 25, it is a top 16 matchup. Talking about the Texas A&M Aggies at the Ole Miss Rebels, 9 p.m. Eastern time tip on ESPN2. I have long shot futures on both. I took Ole Miss preseason, A&M Final Four. Early to mid, I guess, non-conference play. The Aggies got Wade Taylor back on Saturday against LSU. They covered, pushed, or lost against the spread, depending on what number you got. Late number had A&M minus 10.5. So if you got in late, you covered. If you got in early, you probably didn't. They were up 16 with 3:33 left to go in that game. And then Ole Miss, despite not winning on the road at Mississippi State, one of 4 teams to rank in the top 10 percentile of the country in offensive and defensive efficiency, and top 67 percentile in cover rate. And the other 3 teams are Duke, Florida, Michigan State. So Ole Miss has been beating the market's expectation over and over and over again. Justin, does it continue at home against a now healthy A&M offense that can still struggle with or without Wade Taylor?
Yeah, I think this is one of the tougher spots. Ole Miss, very good in terms of not turning the ball over. They shoot well. They force turnovers, so they play that game, right? They're going to allow the teams take a lot of threes against them, but that's a byproduct of winning, right?
And no middle defense.
Right. So, but they right. So it's a no middle D, and so you're going to get a very interesting distribution of shots. It's gone well, though. I don't think there's much to really report on. Some interesting results, maybe expected to lose to Georgia at home. Got a bit lucky in that game. Georgia shot 2 of 18 from deep in that game. Georgia is definitely a team that I think is going under the radar a little bit. That win over St. John's a big deal. That game against Ole Miss, that they still performed that well with a cold performance. Again, you have to still try to give teams credit even on cold nights. It's tough. But yeah, Texas A&M, those 2 losses against Kentucky and Alabama still shining kind of bright, a black eye type of shine, unfortunately. But what are you going to do? Those are 2 really good teams, and you went to Kentucky, and you kind of didn't stay within double digits, and you lost to Alabama at home. But Alabama's a machine, and I mean, Texas A&M is another team that's going to rely on a generation of extra possessions. They do it through rebounding. The turnover numbers look good on defense, especially, but they subsist on a lot of off the dribble threes, a lot of finishing at the rim. They're not exactly hyper efficient at either, but they attack in efficient ways in enough that, you can't really complain, right? Top 100 in rim and 3 rate and a high frequency of more possessions than you. It's a brutalistic attack. They're going to do the right thing. And their regression looks pretty good, except, the defense, they seem to be overperforming. So that shot quality has gripes with both teams. There's no real edge for me here. I would maybe consider an over, especially maybe, Ole Miss's offense to maybe expose a little bit of the problems Texas A&M has, especially on the road there for the Aggies.
Here's my thing with not only taking it over, but maybe looking at Ole Miss. Not that like you said, shot quality,
nothing, not bad,
right? No edge, and
just talking,
right? Just some chit chatter over there, some AI generated content. Just
might as well, No, I'm joking. No edge, but that is sort of the way the data purports itself.
Right. Going back to Ole Miss's overtime loss at Mississippi State, I continue to be impressed by the Rebels. Their defense gave Alabama all kind of issues.
Oh, yeah.
Alabama missed open threes, yes, but they forced 20 plus turnovers in Tuscaloosa. That is incredibly hard to do, even though Mark Sears has underperformed a bit, bounced back against Kentucky on Saturday. But for this game, Mississippi State, to me, maybe not in terms of shot quality, but should have beat Ole Miss, should have covered the 5.5 point line. They out-rebounded the Rebels by 22 and had 19 offensive rebounds. Mississippi State has been outperforming on the glass all year. Malik Dia playing bigger than his size. I am one of the biggest Malik Dia stands in the country. That may go as a quotable line later in the season or even right now, but doesn't matter.
Maybe.
A&M is the best offensive rebounding team in the sport. We've touched on that ad nauseum. Pharrell Payne, the Minnesota transfer, Henry Coleman, Anderson Garcia.
Just difficult to deal with.
Right. It's like St. John's in a sense. If St. John's had 3 versions of Ejiofor on their team, it's true. With Payne and Coleman and Garcia,
you better hit your shots. You better box out. Yep.
Right. Exactly. And that's why A&M's transition defense can be a little bit spotty at times, similar to St. John's, even though A&M may be a little bit more, to me, compact at that end of the floor, a little bit more reliable defensively in transition. But still, they have their issues guarding the ball when the opposition has a fast break opportunity because they don't get the second chance shot. But with Ole Miss here, Josh Hubbard also 2 of 13 from the field in that game. You can credit Ole Miss's defense for sure, similar to how they forced Mark Sears into an inefficient night last week. But with Wade Taylor back for A&M, to me, this is a decent regression spot for A&M's offense after the last 3 games, especially if A&M can control the glass with their second chance opportunities.
I agree. I think there's real chance for this game to be slower and just less, not less possessions, but just less scoring, right? And misses, and then taking it back up top.
Right. So maybe a look to you for the under in this game.
Yeah, I would think so. I think that's kind of the way I'd go. The free throw rate's a little worrisome, but
Yeah.
I mean, A&M, the expected efficiency from three is low. It's going to be interesting. There's plenty of reasons to think both ways. I'm definitely, this is one to watch. That's what I'll say.
Yeah, maybe shot quality live bet.
Yeah. It's been the most profitable way for me all season. I'll tell you that much. It's so, I think getting that extra bit of data and alongside closing line, market movement, and then how they're playing, what you're seeing, and what shot quality is seeing. It's just the more information you have, the sharper you can be, right? That's the whole idea.
Absolutely. So that's going to do it here for this edition of Beat the Closing Number, handicapping the Wednesday card. College basketball, great matchups. Added a future to the portfolio for me as well, potentially for Justin, depending on how he wants to approach it in what is clearly his favorite conference in the country, the Big East. If you missed that soapbox, I highly recommend going back in time.
I would say I'd say second favorite conference, but that's okay.
What's number one? Really
MAAC, baby. MAAC, the low major. I'm as sick as it comes. You will find me at Manhattan, at Marist, at Iona, and I love that MSG has it back, but I am low major, mid major hoops till I die. But yeah, hopefully we get. I think we might get 3 New York schools dancing this year. That's my prediction.
If Xavier makes the Final Four, can I get you to get a tattoo that says low major hoops till I die?
Sure. The money I put on it will pay for it. Gladly. Xavier,
I am holding you to that.
Low major hoops till I die. Happily.
All right. Do you have any bets?
I might not even need them to make it to get that tattoo. That's all I'll say. But no, you got yourself a deal. I'll go put a couple dollars down and we can celebrate at the parlor.
All right. I love it. I'll take a flight off to New York just for that occasion.
Perfect.
For Justin Perri on Shot Quality, one of the best analytical resources for college basketball betting data and beyond. And for myself, Eli Hershkovich, be sure to check out thelines.com for the latest odds and the best sportsbook promos. Also find all of our bets in our Discord channel. Link is over at thelines.com in the top right-hand corner, and I'll have a best bet guide for Xavier St. John's up on Wednesday morning. Thanks for watching and listening to this edition of Beat the Closing Number presented by thelines.com. So long, everybody, and good luck with your college basketball bets.